In this video, we're going to see one of the scariest things that can happen at a school. It's about some young boys who planned something really awful and ended up taking people's lives. What makes it even scarier is that the person who did it didn't feel sorry at all. He even showed a shocking statement in the courtroom with his shirt. Let's start by talking about the first case, T.J. Lane. Lane, who is 18 years old, admitted to shoot at students in February 2012 at Chardon High School, which is east of Cleveland. He said he didn't know why he did it, but he confessed to the shooting. He pleaded guilty to the charges in court and with a crazy smile. Take a second now to subscribe and like the video to help the channel creating more content for you. Even though Lane has hallucinations and fantasies, a judge in juvenile court decided that he was mentally capable of standing trial. This decision was made before the case was transferred to adult court the year before. During his sentencing, Lane behaved weird. He smiled and smirked throughout the proceedings, even when 4 relatives of the victims were speaking. Once he entered, he calmly unbuttoned his blue dress shirt. Underneath, he was wearing a t-shirt with the word "killer" written on it. The prosecutor pointed out that it was similar to the one he wore during the shooting. Then, he turned in his chair to face the gallery where his family and the families of the teenagers he killed were sitting. Suddenly, he spoke, surprising even his own lawyer. "The hand that pulled the trigger that killed your sons now masturbates to the memory," he said, then cursed and raised his middle finger toward the victim's relatives. Dina, mother of victim Daniel, called Lane a pathetic excuse for a human being and wished upon him an extremely slow, torturous death. She said she has nightmares and her family has been physically sick over the crimes. According to prosecutors, Lane brought a .22 caliber pistol and a knife to the school. He then fired 10 shots at a group of students in the cafeteria. 3 students, Daniel Parmator and Demetrius Hewlin, both 16, and Russell King, 17, were killed in the attack. After he was sentenced in court, he went straight to jail. 2 years later, he tried to escape with 2 other inmates. However, they were all caught and brought back into custody after the incident. The details of how the men escaped from the Allen Oakwood Correctional Institution haven't been shared. However, according to local media, they climbed over a fence while they were on a recreation break. What do you think about this crazy court case? It shocked not only the families because there was no remorse shown, but it also shocked the whole world. Let's go on with next brutal case that shows the teenager Charles Andy Williams. Williams admitted in court that he committed 2 murders and attempted to kill 13 others during a shooting at a high school in suburban San Diego. Take a second now to subscribe and like the video to help the channel creating more content for you. Williams, who was 16 years old to that time, made this admission during a court session that was supposed to check if he was prepared for trial. Although he pleaded guilty, prosecutors still want him to spend his life in prison, although they dropped some charges related to assault. Williams's lawyer, Randy Mize, told the judge that Williams didn't want to cause any more pain to the families of the victims or his own family. Many relatives of the victims were crying in the courtroom as this was said. During the shooting at Santana High School, which lasted about 6 minutes, 2 students, Brian Zukor, 14, and Randy Gordon, 17, lost their lives. 11 other students, along with a teacher and a campus monitor, were injured. Although Williams would have been treated as an adult in court, prosecutors decided to only seek life imprisonment for him. The judge in San Diego gave the tearful school shooter, Charles Andy Williams, a sentence of 50 years to life in prison. This is the least amount of time he could have received for his crime. Williams could have been sentenced to as much as 425 years in prison for what he did at Santana High School in March 2001. But the judge didn't give him that long. He said that giving him a longer sentence would be like putting him in prison for life, which he couldn't do. The judge also mentioned that Williams had shown he was sorry for what he did. During the sentencing in a San Diego courtroom, Williams said he was sorry for what he did. but it was hard to understand him because he was so upset. Family members of the people he hurt asked the judge to keep him in prison forever. "I feel terrible about," he said, trying to apologize quickly before he started crying. He looked much older and more grown up than the skinny 15-year-old in the picture taken when he was arrested. He said he wished he had never even gotten out of bed on the day of the shooting. "It really hurts me. I'm responsible for all this stuff," he said. Should he receive the maximum sentence possible of 425 years to show him the consequence for his actions? Comment it down below. Next case shows a verdict that is first on the channel. We would like to hear your thoughts also on this one after talking about the case. So, theater shooter Holmes gets 12 life sentences plus 3,000 years. Yes, you heard it right. A judge in Colorado officially gave James Egan Holmes many life sentences, along with thousands of years in prison for the Aurora movie theater attack. This attack killed 12 people and hurt 70 others. Holmes, who was 27 years old and used to be a graduate student, got 1 life sentence for each person he killed and for setting up explosives in his apartment. He won't ever be able to ask for parole. It is the court's intention that the defendant never set foot in free society again, Judge Carlos Samur said after imposing the sentence. If there was ever a case that warranted a maximum sentence, this is the case. The defendant does not deserve any sympathy. As Holmes, wearing red prison clothes and chained at the waist, was taken out of the courtroom where he had been every day since jury selection started in January, some people clapped lightly. The prosecutor, George Brauchler, thought that the sentence given to Holmes was the 4th longest ever in the United States. He said that the judge's decision to quickly remove Holmes from the courtroom was the right way to end a hard and painful trial. What happened on that tragic day? Holmes wore a helmet, a gas mask, and protective gear as he threw tear gas into Theater 9 of the Century 16 Megaplex in Aurora at the beginning of the midnight showing of The Dark Knight Rises. He had a shotgun, a rifle, and a pistol, and started shooting on July 20th, 2012. He had over 700 rounds of ammunition. When his gun stopped working, Holmes left the theater and turned himself in. The testimony talked a lot about Holmes's mental illness. They showed a notebook filled with his random thoughts and detailed plans for the attack, along with hours of recorded interviews with a psychiatrist appointed by the court. Holmes admitted that he had thoughts of killing people since he was a teenager. He said he studied neuroscience partly to try to fix what he saw as his broken brain. He also mentioned thinking about suicide before coming up with a plan that gave him points for each life he took. The defense team said Holmes was a victim of mental illness. They brought in many witnesses who knew him as a kind and smart kid, but the prosecutors disagreed, saying Holmes was self-centered and turned violent when things didn't go well in his love life and studies. The judge finished the court day with following sentences. "We will never know what they would have accomplished. We will never know what impact they would have made in the world," Samur said. The defendant robbed not only the family members and friends of these victims, he robbed the world of all these deceased victims would have accomplished. What are your thoughts? Was it the right verdict for this tragic shooting at the theater? Take a second to write it down. Next courtroom case is as bad as it can get. Teenager Nikolas Cruz, the person who caused the shooting at Parkland School, won't get the death penalty. Instead, a jury in Florida decided he will spend his life in prison. This is because he was responsible for the tragic event at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, where 17 people lost their lives. Let's talk about the details of this case. Cruz admitted he was guilty of 17 counts of first-degree murder and 17 counts of trying to commit first-degree murder. This was related to the tragic events on February 14, 2018, when he killed 14 students and 3 staff members at his old school. Among those who lost their lives were Peter Wang, a 15-year-old, who was part of the Army Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps. He died while helping his classmates escape. Another victim was Scott Bagel, a 35-year-old geography teacher. He was shot and killed while guiding students to safety in his classroom. Benjamin Thomas, who was the head of the jury, talked to the news afterwards. He said he didn't choose the life sentence, and he's not pleased with the outcome. However, he understands that everyone has their own beliefs and it's a personal moral choice. Some jurors thought that the life sentence was the right decision. What is your opinion on this case? How would you decide? Sometimes it's shocking how many shootings occurred in the States. In the following incident, Timothy Simpkins was a student of the Timberview High School shooting, where the tragic incident happened October 3 years ago. He was found guilty of attempted capital murder for shooting 3 people at his high school, and was sentenced at the final court day to 12 years in state prison. The jury took about 5 hours to decide what would happen to Simpkins. They all agreed on his punishment: 12 years in prison and a $6,000 fine. After the decision was made, teacher Calvin Petit spoke. Since then, he couldn't go back to teaching or be in places with lots of people and noise. Your choices on that day have stripped me of the ability to work and make a positive impact, said Calvin. On a daily basis, I'm riddled with lasting affects of PTSD, anxiety, depression, and a fear of being in loud, crowded spaces. Prosecutor said in a statement after the sentencing, "We take school shootings seriously. That should not be the norm in our society." In court, Simpkins felt emotional and told that he's not as bad as the prosecution makes him out to be. "I know I messed up. I'm really sorry. I just want another opportunity," he said with tears. "I wish I could undo it every day, but I can't." In court, Simpkins kept saying he had the gun to protect himself because he was scared. He also kept saying sorry for what happened. "I'm sorry for what I did. I know it was wrong and terrible. I'm sorry to everyone I hurt, physically and mentally. There's no excuse for what I did. I didn't know what would happen to me, so I was just scared." His lawyers kept saying that Simpkins was bullied and attacked before the shooting at school during a fight in October 2021. 2 students and a teacher got shot. Simpkins took the stand because he wanted to, and his defense team thinks it helped his case. Before the closing statements, the judge read instructions. If someone is convicted of trying to commit a very serious crime like murder, they could be sent to prison for 5 to 99 years. Do you agree with the jury and their sentencing? We are interested in your opinion, so please write it down. In this case following, a former student teamed up with a classmate to kill teenager at a Denver high school. Devon Erickson was found guilty of all 46 charges against him. This includes murder for killing a student who tried to stop the attack. Less than 24 hours after lawyers finished talking in his trial, Devon Erickson got a verdict. Prosecutors said Erickson, who was 20 at the time, and Alec McKinney worked together in the shooting. It happened at School Highlands Ranch near Denver. They shot Kendrick Castillo, who was 18, and hurt 8 others. The shooting took place in a dark classroom. It was full of high school seniors who were watching The Princess Bride before graduation. Castillo, Joshua Jones, and Brendan Bialy tried to stop Erickson when he pulled out a gun. But the gun jammed after he shot 4 times. Massive respect to those students who took the action in this moment. Erickson's lawyers said that when he was 18, he was pushed and controlled by his younger friend into joining in. McKinney, who was younger, admitted guilt last year and testified against Erickson. What are your thoughts on these court cases? Take a second to write it down. Please subscribe to our channel and check out one of these videos. See you next time around. Take care.